right? They also don't understand India to a large extent. Don't think they'll come back in a hurry. See, when they were at a great advantage, they couldn't seal the deal, whatever it was. How will they do it tomorrow? We'll still have petrol flashes. We'll still have face-offs. We might have issues.
Hello and welcome to my channel. This is Aadi. I'm here, honored and privileged again to be joined by Lt Gen Ravi Shankar, who, apart from his long military career in the Indian Army, also writes pretty extensively about various strategic issues concerning India today. I've been reading some of his articles and I forced Sir to give me some time to answer some questions that I had on the future of disengagement. Good evening, sir, and welcome, and thank you for joining me today.
Oh, thanks a lot, and it's a pleasure to join you once again, and I look forward to all the questions which you have, and to your viewers also. Go ahead, please.
Thank you, sir. So before we start with the future, and I'd like to cover some of the hot topics which are moving around, and I'd like you to give your assessment in terms of predictions.
Okay.
What is going to happen? And in one of your writings, you mentioned that the Chinese, sometime in May, you've written this article that the Chinese would actually withdraw in the way that they have withdrawn.
Yeah.
How did you come up to this assessment, and why is it that you were so sure about this outcome?
You see, if you go back before this event, over the past few years, there have been some face-offs, like some extended face-offs. And if you go back, analyze Sundrang Chu also, it is as good or bad as a face-off as this is in 80s, 88. So if you see the trajectory of those face-offs, and this, there was no difference. One. Number two, in Harvard, there's a Belfer Center which looks into strategic affairs. Now, Belfer Center has come out with a study which says on the LAC, India has got more troops and is stronger than the Chinese. And this came last year before this event, everything. And I'm sure the Chinese would also read it, right? So from force projection and everything, I was quite sanguine that this will where it will end. And the third part is that Himalayas, takes out all other equations, ground. You have everything else gets equalized. Then it becomes man to man. Man to man kind of strength we have. It had to end this way.
It's quite amazing to have a prediction like that when pretty much everything was going fluid at that time.
No, it was to me it was quite clear.
So again, from some of your writings, I also read that India must not be in a hurry to disengage from the Chinese. And somewhere down the line, you can actually see that happening as well. Not in the recent thing with the speed of disengagement, but generally the time taken in the talks and so on and so forth. We've taken our time with things.
There are a couple of reasons for that.
Yes.
Yeah. Completely fair.
How did you come up with this assessment, and what are the advantages of this?
See, first and foremost, once you are in a face-off, okay, and at that point of time, we were in a bit of an adverse situation, having ceded ground in Galwan almost, and had the trackers in Galwan. Pangong, so we were clearly at finger four, which is to our disadvantage. If you disengaged at that time, he would have declared victory first. So there's no question of disengagement. Second, you don't disengage, you hold him there. The moment you hold him there, it allows you time to build up. Right? So you fix him. Okay? You engage him. That's one of the fundamental principles of war. Right? Fire and move. So one chap fires, the other chap moves. So you fix him and the other reinforcements come and reinforce the whole thing. So then that means you build up your strength. The next thing is something very simple. India has a habit. It is a characteristic, in fact. We always counter punch. We take the first blow and then build and counter punch. We build strength and counter punch. That's what happened in virtually in 65, 71, as also in Kargil. So we if you don't disengage, you get time to counterpunch. And third, once our people get into the mountains are stable, they'll make mincemeat out of China. The experience of being in terrain. Many people in this entire thing have forgotten terrain,
Mm.
and which I didn't discount. I never discounted because I've served almost from Karakoram to Kibitu, almost all points. So I know what the terrain is. So terrain plays a great role. That's the thing. Yeah.
So basically, we've played them to our advantages. What you're trying
Yeah,
to
yeah, yeah, yeah. Playing it out, and I knew, they got a single child policy, so every soldier is one child. He won't like to lose himself. So morale, and they are fighting 3,000 kilometers away or 4,000 kilometers away from their houses, or maybe even 6,000 kilometers away from their houses. Someone from Jillian, which is the northeast of China, to come to Tibet and fight. What motivation will he have left? He'll take 10 days to reach home. Whereas we are fighting for our homeland. We put our SFF guys there,
Mm.
Tibetans.
Their
See,
homeland.
there's a big difference. Yeah, there's a big difference. With time, we had to gain strength.
Correct, sir. So this is a current thing. I mean, of course, we discussed last time that the Chinese would find a way to spin this around.
Yeah,
And the current release of this whole Galwan video, of course, the Galwan battle happened in the pitch dark.
yeah.
It started in the evening and went on till late in the morning. And this video is in bright daylight. So that's the first counter that one can give to that. Anyways, leaving that aside, what is the reasoning of the Chinese coming up suddenly and releasing a video like this, acknowledging their casualties, and although not correct, but why?
No, it's not correct. I wouldn't say it's not correct. It's their choice. They did it, right? But the fact, it's reactionary. See, we've honored our martyrs, for people who died there.
Hmm.
We gave Babu MVC, four others VRC, all this on 26. Then immediately following that, there's a disengagement in which they ceded ground. They had to break their defenses and go back. So there's a lot of anger within people. People would say, so much has happened and you come back, and if you tell us you've not lost people, no one will believe it. So they had to declare those four people and give them some medals and all that.
Hmm.
And then they had to show something as if they're defending something. It is a clear fake. They can compete with really any Hollywood war movie. That's a different story. Right? But they had to go do some ops. Now they'll spin as if they're defending the motherland and this and that.
Hmm.
But that's part of the story. I wouldn't blame much. It's internal for their internal audience. They have to assuage people inside.
So, do you think it's basically not for the world consumption? It is
Basically for internal domestic consumption.
so that they can pacify their audience at
Yeah,
home.
pacify. Of course, it serves the other purpose that to say, no, no, we are also done, what, all this.
Hmm.
And they'll give it to Pakistan and such countries, no, where they'll say, oh, we're great. That's all.
So they can put a little weird pressure
Yeah,
on.
yeah. That's
So now this is the recent. I'd like to know, actually ask you to predict in the future what would be the military implications for a country like China, who projects itself to be a so-called superpower, especially looking at what happened to them on the 29th and 30th. Looking at what General Joshi came out and said about both the South Bank and the North Bank being occupied by our forces, apart from the fact that they've got a rubbing when they've had to go back, as you just said, that they've had to destroy their own setup when they go back. What do you think it's going to be? How is it that the military of the Chinese, the general leadership, I'm not talking about the Communist Party, I'm talking about the generals and the staff and the soldiers and what kind of an impact will this have on them? And how do you see the future of the Chinese military trying to portray itself as God's gift to mankind when they've actually
Mhm.
not been able to do anything?
Yeah, I think, one big thing about this whole thing is the halo of the invincible PLA is burst, broken. They're human beings, they bleed as good as you and I. That they're invincible is also broken. That they can be beaten is also come across. And that's going to have ramifications worldwide. Now you can handle the PLA. Then the next thing which has come out is their inexperience, right? So it doesn't matter whether he's got aircraft carrier or warplanes or whatever he has. He doesn't know how to handle them. So he's always at a disadvantage. The man behind the machine is weak.
Hmm.
Okay. The next thing which has come out very clearly is that leadership is weak. Having had all these advantages, they couldn't take it to their end state, logical state, wherever they wanted it to go. Though no one knew what their end state was or their aim was.
Hmm.
But so the leadership at unit level is weak. I always maintain there's a stability instability paradox in the PLA. I'll explain it. There's a lot of stability at the top, planning, equipping, finances, all that, very clear, and projecting PLA as the biggest force and all that. But there's instability at the bottom. There's at the unit level, low morale, inexperience, poor leadership. That's going to play out in future also. And tomorrow, anyone can show eyes to them. Every small country, and it projects Indian uh, military and leadership in a bigger, better light. That's also there,
Hmm. So,
right?
sir,
So,
what does it do to the superpower image that is trying to portray, especially in the South China Sea region, let's say 6 months down the line?
see, look at it this way. There are two ways of looking at it. Firstly, his image as a superpower will take a beating, big beating. People will say you can't even really climb two mountains. How will you go and conquer seas?
Hmm.
Right. So that's going to be a problem. But having said that, I wouldn't read beyond into it beyond a point because after some time memories fade. See, you look at USA. USA lost in Vietnam. It still declared whatever victory it wanted and came out. It's lost in Afghanistan. It's come out. It's gone to Iraq and really lost the battle. They won that odd. I mean, they won that odd battle and campaign, and but the overall war they've lost.
Hmm.
So superpowers have a habit of declaring victory and getting out even if it is a loss. But the only difference between that and this is here you've been forced out of an equation by a rising power like India. That has got to have ramifications. Okay, so that's how I read it.
Now, sir, I'm sure everybody's more focused towards our own country rather than South China Sea.
Yeah.
This thing, and I'd like to ask you, what do you think are the Chinese plans for India? Of course, they came in to try and teach us a lesson or whatever they wanted to do. But the debate obviously is already on whether the Chinese will come back in the summer, this summer, next summer, and this and that. What is, in your opinion, would be the plans of the Chinese in regard to India in the future?
See, first and foremost, what they'll now do is they'll hold on to Depsang and all these places and say, look, we've done this tactical retreat, but we are going to get getting a strategic gain. They'll try to spin this into a victory.
Mm.
That is the first thing they'll try. Okay. Now, as time goes by, there are too many factors mitigating against their coming back immediately. They cannot come back immediately. In any case, this year is a centenary year of CCP, so
Mm.
they'll not risk coming back now. And next year is Beijing Olympics, Winter Olympics, so they don't want an event before that, and unless people start boycotting those Olympics and things like that, so they'll not come. And plus, they know now there's a differential between PLA and Indian Army in terms of capability, the human capability. So they'll have to do training, rebuilding, reorganizing, and all. Then they have to find a different leadership. So a lot of things are there. Defeat generates a lot of issues.
Mm.
So that problem they'll have to go through, and I don't see them coming back till 2023, if at all. Beyond that, we don't know. All right, one. Even then, that doesn't mean nothing will happen. A
Mm.
situation can go bad, it can escalate. There will be petrol clashes, there will be some probing thing, and if he finds a weakness, he'll climb. Similarly, if you find a weakness, you should climb. We shouldn't, you know, let go of the situation. We should remain on top of the situation.
So, one thing that I think comes into the mind when somebody talks about the future is that, of course, as you mentioned, these probing is not going to stop. Happened in
Yeah,
Nakula just about a month and a half or
yeah,
so, and this is just before the so-called peace agreement between the
yeah,
militaries have been signed and stuff like that. You also mentioned that they would hold on to Depsang for a while to kind of push their luck around the place.
yeah.
What do you think is the reasoning why they would do something like that, apart from just putting a necessary or unnecessary is debatable pressure on India?
See that they will always put us under some pressure or other. That's part of their thing. To every rising power, I mean, a bigger power will try to keep the rising power down.
Hmm.
So they'll have to show us down militarily, right? That they will do something or the other. And if they can grab something like what they did in Doklam or Nakula, they'll do. Uh, you know, and they have to show something to their own people. So all put together, they will, do some activity.
Hmm.
How far they'll succeed is a different story. But we shouldn't be we shouldn't be laid back about anything.
So, looking at the Indian military, of course, it's a big boost in morale. Uh, there is a feel-good factor that you've beaten somebody which is larger than you, stronger than you, more economically viable than you. But having said that, what are the connotations for the Indian military post this clash? Looking, let's say, 2 years down the line, are we going to be focusing more towards the Chinese? Has the Chinese made us stronger by?
Yeah, yeah, I understand. First and foremost, I think India has gained strategic confidence in this whole deal. We've come out better, and we have got more confidence strategically to handle affairs.
Hmm.
Right? One. Number two, as a result of all this, now we have very clearly gone towards a chord. The chord is forming. It's more solid than before. For the first time, our own, press release of the MEA says chord ministerial meeting.
Hmm.
So you're getting into some kind of a alliance or a partnership, which is a little different from what it was before.
Hmm.
So your strategic positioning is shifting, right? So you're more confident about the whole thing. As far as the army is concerned, the one good thing about this whole thing is in the past 9 months, whatever upgrade has taken place of defenses and infrastructure and all would normally have taken place in 5-10 years. So you got a great upgrade and there's a lot of focus and it'll only get better. And you're now looking at offensive capabilities there by rebalancing
Hmm.
forces on the plains. So the focus is better. You will be better off. Now it's very difficult for China to do anything funny. They also know it. Okay. And it doesn't take away your focus from Pakistan either.
Hmm.
And naturally, China is your bigger adversary, and it's very right that we are now going to hereafter focus on them. And Pakistan is no adversary. It will remain, but I don't think it's a major adversary that we have to worry about the way we used to worry about it the last decade or the before that.
Hmm.
They are fighting for survival on their own. They have internal problems. Pakistan is internalizing it very heavily. They don't have time. If you read their newspapers and everything, you might find one article about India, but there'll be 20 articles about their own issues and burning issues.
So the Chinese are pretty good in messaging,
Yeah.
and even at the beginning of the standoff, one saw the tents and the sangars and the everything put up wide in the open.
Mm.
Anybody with a very basic knowledge of military strategy would know that that is the most dangerous place to be when somebody's actually coming for war. So I don't know whether we actually read into this situation or not. So looking at that, their speedy retreat. I mean, they've actually outpaced us in terms of a retreat. Uh, I don't know how much we've pulled back because the news of that is very little. But the news for them going across is very high, very high. What kind of uh, messaging do you think that the Chinese are doing? Are they saying that we have the speed and capability, or is it just that they just want to get out of there?
I think they just want to get out of it. What speed and capability are we talking of? Just because you can run back fast doesn't mean you'll run forward fast. I mean, right? And there's a momentum factor. If you run back fast at whole mass, it's very difficult to come back also. And the morale of breaking your own defenses, you occupy a defense, go break it, and then vacate it. The morale factor is very bad. And we have not done that. And our stepping back is very little. You just step back from the Kailash train. That's all. You come back from the top to a little lower height. So I think it's going to be a big problem for them. To motivate people to come back after what they've done is horrible. Unit level, I shudder to think.
That's why I asked this question. As a military person, I mean, just putting yourself in the shoes of...
Yeah, it's very poor morale. There'll be very poor morale today in those units. So that is there.
So what about India and China borders or the LAC? Are we looking at a possibility of, and this is something that you've written again some time back, are we looking at a possibility of a manned LAC like what we have in the LOC on the other side? That's point one.
Yeah.
And point two is, are the Chinese actually prepared for something like that?
See, I don't think that, firstly, to answer the question, I don't think Chinese are interested in a manned LAC. Because the moment you have a manned LAC, the dynamics are more. Your commitment is more. And the moment China commits more forces, everything here, right? It's at the cost of their forces on South China Sea, that front. And they will be always in a two-front situation with China, and this is their less priority front, so they don't want to be here. So they will always go for a unmanned LAC. They will go towards an unmanned LAC. What are the first question you asked?
So, I mean, one is this, and the second part is that do the Chinese actually have the capability? We know we've got the ITBP, we can increase the divisions and this and that.
No, I mean, they have the manpower. Capability, yes, they have. They can get into a manned LAC. But manning an LAC which is over 3,000 kilometers is not a joke. It's very tough. It's tough for us and tough for them also.
Correct.
Right? So it doesn't make sense to man such a huge LAC. And the problem with the LAC into LOC kind of a situation is you will have firing and this, it will degenerate. And then it becomes unstable. Instability for them is in Tibet. For us, it's in our own area. No problem. And Tibet, if it becomes unstable, they have bigger problems. So it becomes a hybrid situation for them. Then you start what Pakistan has been doing to us, we do to them. So I don't think they'll even think of a manned LAC. They'll come down to a normal LAC. Maybe a manned at a few places at sensitive points, but it'll overall become an unmanned LAC.
So status quo ante, as per se.
It'll come, yeah. Some part will get manned. Critical points will get manned. There'll be more forces and reserve and all that. And there'll be some quick reaction elements around. It will not be fully like status quo ante. It will be at a different level. But overall, I don't think we can sustain this kind of a confrontation.
So, the Pakistanis have fought 3 wars with us. 3, 4, 5. I mean, the list is endless actually. And endless operations. They know they can't beat us militarily. And I guess the Chinese have also kind of got a message that it's going to be very, very difficult for them to, hit the Indian army and just run away and stuff like that. Do you think that the Chinese would actually come into a phase when they would start using asymmetric warfare the same way that the Pakistanis do to us?
Yeah, they've already tried it. They know it. It's not new. Earlier, they supported all the northeast groups. The northeastern groups used to go to this Temoiwa and all from LSCN. They used to go to China and get trained and come back. So that's on the cards. They've already said that we'll do that, right? They might start supporting JNK people and all that. So asymmetric options, they will. I won't be surprised if they're already funding some part of the farm protests in some manner and all that. Though it's a different story, but they will not. I mean, without getting into the semantics or the good bad of the farm laws or the protests, every democratic problem is something which China will exploit. It's part of the stated policy to exploit the loopholes of democracy.
Hmm.
It's part of the influence operations. It's part of their three-war strategy.
Hmm.
So anything they will do, right? And we also have to remember there's a wide swath of communists in our country. Other day I was listening on the TV. One communist person was saying we shouldn't have fought, we shouldn't have confronted China at all, even now. So our country has got its own problems, right? And China will exploit these fissures, the fissures of democracy, if I may say so. But that's okay. We have to handle it.
So, I mean, the understanding of the Chinese system, we all say communist and this and that, they're hardly communists. I mean,
Yeah.
the principles of communists went out the window a long time back in the Chinese thing. They're more of an authoritarian regime. Help us understand what will be the internal repercussions. And, we were having a chat about this the other day as well. What would be the internal repercussions on the president and the Chinese Communist Party having gotten their face slapped by India? I'm sure the news does trickle inside somewhere or the other.
Yeah, there will be repercussions. You see, after the once we occupied Kailash Range 2 months back, that Western military commander was sacked. Normally, after the command of this, people go into the Central Military Commission and all. He has been sent home. Now, already he's been scapegoated. Other way of looking at it is Xi Jinping has put the blame on. So after this, also they'll do something like that. There will be internal churn. Let's be very clear. Heads will roll, right? Uh, if the situation goes bad, even Xi Jinping might go. Who knows? See, the thing about revolutions is it takes an idea to spark a revolution.
Mm.
Okay, in regimes like this, which where we don't know what's happening inside, what's happening, suddenly it might collapse. But prima facie, it doesn't appear so. Okay, and we also have to understand, apart from the problem of now having lost this thing, whatever they spin outside is a different story. Internally, they know that they've lost it. They have the pressure of the corona. Their economy is not doing that great as it is supposed to have done. Actually, if you read some stories coming out, there is a big difference between the rich people and the poor people there. They're struggling. People are not prepared to marry. People are not prepared to have children. So there are issues. Why they're not prepared to have children? They can't afford them. Because the economy is so bad that they can't afford them. In the past 1 year, their birth rate has declined by 30%. Okay, 30% drop in 1 year birth rate. So there are issues which we don't know. So it's not a very stable country as it appears outside. So we our democracy looks unstable, but it is far more stable than we believe it to be ourselves. We are quite okay.
So, what would be your advice to the policymakers to how to take advantage of a situation like this if they see that the Chinese are getting a little unstable within themselves? How?
I think we just have to be strong, uh, build up our comprehensive national power, right, and not allow that instability to touch us, because there is a good chance that it might touch us, right. And the second thing is, given the fact that China is going to be our long-term adversary, the faster we decouple from them, the better it is in all walks of life, or keep it to the minimum. Your trade balance, their investments, everything. Keep them at an arm's length. Let them be what they are, and we need to ensure that they don't make too much, inroads into our neighborhood. We slowly must root them out. If
Mm.
there is instability here, that's the right time for us to root it out around us. Deweed it from say Bangladesh and Sri Lanka and Nepal and Bhutan and Maldives and all these places, Mauritius. So this is what we need to do. So we need to have right. More than that, I don't see ourselves going and exploiting the situation in Tibet and all that. And in any case, that's not our character.
Mm.
Non-interference, non-alignment has been our that's been our ethos. So we will not do that, right? But we need to be we should strengthen ourselves internally. That's more important.
You mentioned Tibet. Now, the entire process of this battle, if I may put it that way, as a loose word, occurred through Tibet. Do you think it's going to result, because anytime there is a military action in any region within India as well, we've seen it, there is some sort of an instability that happens. People know what's happening. The news does spread. You can't stop somebody's mouth. Do you think it's going to result in a little bit of instability within Tibet?
Yeah,
Part one, we
yeah,
also
that is
use
already
the,
there.
sorry, but we also use the SFF. There are certain reports that we've played the Tibetan national anthem when they were playing Punjabi music on the Pangong. So, do you think it's going to go back and result in some sort of instability for them?
Look, they would, but you have to realize one thing. Uh, you know, Tibet has been sinicized over a period of time. It's no
Mm,
more the Tibet of say 30 years back, 40 years back. They've developed Tibet quite a bit.
true.
Uh, all the dissidents in Tibet have fled Tibet. Okay, and they've infiltrated the Buddhist monks and monasteries. So I mean, Chinese are no fools, huh?
Mm,
So they've also started having these de-radicalization camps, or what they call, training camps and education camps. They have a plan, okay, but there will be instability because of this. Uh, you also have to understand USA has got a Tibet Reorganization Act bill, TSPA,
mm,
and they've now appointed a special coordinator for Tibet, and Xinjiang is also on the radar for human rights. All this will get clubbed, so it will play out. The Chinese realize it. Now, the Chinese have a Tibet solidification plan
mm,
where they're going to say that Tibet has to follow uh, Sinic principles. They say the socialist, Buddhism should have socialist features.
mm.
So they're going to tamper with it. They're going to tamper with the Dalai Lama succession. All this is on the cards. So they will counter it uh, whichever way they want. Right. So it's going to be interesting times.
Mm.
Probably this is the last window we have, if at all the Tibet card has to be played. After this, I doubt if we let this go, we'll never get a chance. But then the next question is, can it happen? Are we prepared to do it? A lot of issues. I will say that these things will evolve. I don't think today we have a plan for it. But let us see how things move, because it also depends on the geopolitics, international geopolitics.
Mm.
Yeah.
So, you mentioned Chinese won't be back for at least 2 to 3 years in this big way. I mean, the way they've come this time is it's huge. The kind of deployment that we did, um, because of various reasons, the centenary, the Winter Olympics, and stuff like that. But in a way, are you saying that the Chinese will be back in bigger, the same, bigger, or even a much more sinister way post that 2 3 years gap?
We don't know what happens in the next 2 3 years. It's very difficult to predict beyond 2 years. We don't know what kind of a government will be there in China. We don't know our own situation, what kind of a politics will be in India.
Hmm.
Uh, our country is also as unpredictable as any other the way things move. So it depends on the political situation at that point of time.
But
right?
keeping things similar,
If you keep, even then, I don't think they'll come back in a hurry.
hmm,
Because by then you must realize in 2 years we're going to get stronger on the border or infrastructure, everything. So the
hmm,
gap, see, when they were at a great advantage, they couldn't seal the deal, whatever it was. How will they do it tomorrow? Okay. And their capability is not going to increase that much as our capability is going to increase.
hmm,
Right. And the other capabilities of AI and cyber and all don't work in Himalayas. And that's borne out very clearly. So yeah, they you might have more activity in the maritime zone. That is a feasibility.
hmm.
So we have to look at our island territories and all that and develop our navy. We need to have a bit of a holistic outlook with China.
So are you talking about periodical harassment?
I don't know. I mean, the way it depends. It's too early to say whether they'll do this or not. Because we've just gone through a disengagement. If the process is on, it's still a tinderbox. One incident and it might get back to square one. So I don't think this thing, but I am very confident that in the next 2 years something big will not happen unless there's an incident. And in 2 years things will evolve, and then we'll see, reassess.
Hmm. So if things are status quo, it'll be calm and peaceful.
Yeah, and you see, go back again. Sundramchu happened in the 80s.
Hmm,
After that, for a good 2 decades, nothing happened. A
hmm,
lot of ups and downs. Now you got Xi Jinping, and he's there. Who knows? Tomorrow you might die because of a heart attack or something like that, and then whole politics will change. The whole scene will change. So
hmm.
to look beyond 2 years is very difficult.
All right, so let me reduce the time frame. Next 6 months. Do you think we're going to have the Chinese out of our hair? I'm not saying they're coming back. I'm just saying, do you think we will have the Chinese out of our hair within the next 6 months?
No, no, they'll not be out of our hair. They'll be there. What has happened? They've just gone back, say, 50, 100 kilometers. That's all.
Hmm,
Nothing more. Till these forces go to their barracks where they came from, things are not easy. So it's not as if we are out uh, home and dry, all peace, and start eating really Hakka noodles there. Uh, we have to be careful.
hmm,
We'll still have petrol flashes. We'll still have face-offs. We might have issues. The whole disengagement process might get dismantled.
hmm.
Right. Only thing is, we should be more proactive this time. We are better prepared than before. So the chances are less, right? If I put it, say, 80% no chance of a reflare. Okay, 20% chances are there. How far it will escalate, we don't know,
Hmm.
right? And let us see. Exciting times.
What is, in your opinion, the Chinese perception of India today? Sir? Have they changed their perception, or they are still thinking we are the weak country who's just going to say, sorry,
See,
sir?
in their perception, we are a weak country.
Hmm,
Because democracy, by them, by their thinking, any democracy is weak. Okay, so we are a weak country. But at the same time, they understand that there's some innate strength in India which keeps coming back. They started understanding it better, right? They also don't understand India to a large extent.
okay.
They don't understand India. For them, it's a wonder as to how so many different people of different category, languages, cultures, and religions, and different ideologies can get along
Hmm,
and still keep rising. Whereas they are ethnicity 90% hand, same guy, same everything, right? And so they have, at one level they understand each other, at another level they don't at all.
I think I've discovered a whole new perspective. It was quite of a light bulb that went around when you said that the Chinese don't understand us, because we always
Yeah, I'll
blame
give
us.
you no, no. I'll give you an example.
Hmm,
when we were doing the National Defense College, so there was one Chinese colonel who came and spoke to us about China. And then he said, we should all live together, stay together. See, in your roads, even a bus goes, even a cycle rickshaw goes, even a bullock cart goes, but everyone go on the same road and this and that. So first time he said it, we said okay. Second time he said it, third time he said it. In the course of an hour's talk, he said it 4 5 times. Then we realized that this fellow is so psyched because he never seen it.
Mhm.
The question in his mind is, how can this happen? No. You main road, a bloody bullock cart also goes, and a bloody BMW also goes. That the reconciliation of this differential is very difficult in his mind.
Very
Okay,
interesting.
so
So I think some of the questions are going to answer a lot of things which are floating around on social media, especially for people who don't know defense, people who are sitting somewhere in the
yeah,
middle of the country.
that's
They are
and
at the end of it, everybody has that little worry. Hai mera desh,
yeah, there's no doubt.
that
Our
little
Desh is
worry is
strong.
there.
I have no doubt.
And to hear it from,
Our
sorry, please go ahead, sir.
Yeah, our country is very strong. We've got some innate strengths which people don't understand. I mean, the guys who really understand us well
Hmm.
are the Brits, the French, and even the US guys. Having dealt with the US people and quite a detail, the amount of training which goes on with US is not funny.
Hmm.
Air Force, Army, armor, artillery. So they know our true worth.
So they would be sitting down and smiling and saying,
Yeah,
now
they
this.
know. Yeah, they know.
I think coming from a ex-army person, the assurance of stability will go a long way on towards the people who get that message. So my
See,
last question. Sorry.
yeah, no. Look at it.
Hmm.
Pakistan. Pakistan has taken us to war at a time and place of its choosing 4 to 5 times. And every time we have beaten them. Now, including this, out of the 5 confrontations we've had with uh, China, we've
Hmm.
beaten them 4 times, barring 62. What more do you? What more is what is stronger than that?
If this was a tennis match, they would have been out.
Yeah, they would have been out.
So my last question has two small parts. One, of course, due to politics in this country, military, unfortunately, and I personally regret the factor because it is the same military which served under both the parties or both the ruling parties and stuff. When politics is involved in the military, does it actually affect the morale of the line soldiers? How does the army cover for something like this?
I put it this way: I don't. It's a bit unfortunate to see, some of our parties who are not in power to behave the way they do, and though they say they support the army, I'm sure they do support the army, but their problem with the ruling party overshadows that support. So it's a little demoralizing to see it. But for the rank and file, I don't think so because they're not. They don't see these people, talk every day, right? In any case, the army is not too bothered about local level politics or national level politics or daily politics. We are quite apolitical that way, right? Now, I can speak a bit because I've retired. That even then I'm not too bothered about it. Even when I write, I don't write for a party or I write for the nation. I write
Yes.
for the army,
Hmm.
armed forces. Right? It's not for a government or a ruling party or an opposition party. We write for larger issues. So we are very clear. Our oath is to the constitution, and something very uh, significant about our armed forces. armed forces, the head of the armed forces, the commander in chief, I don't know, commander in chief, is the president. You understood it. It is not even the government. In a manner, or loyalty is to the president and the nation and the constitution. That is never lost sight of.
That brings in a lot of insight. So basically, the army, it won't really affect it because of the morale
No,
and
no,
the ethos the force carries.
no.
Very interesting, sir. Sir, what is it that India should do now? Because we always have a dream. This is my second part of the question about being a superpower. Internally, politically, is something I really don't want to get into. I'm talking about militarily speaking. Is it
See,
time that we?
forget about being a superpower. I mean, that's too far off. We
Hmm,
shouldn't aim for that. Let's be a good power. Let's be a good nation. We are a power in many, ways.
hmm,
Where again, 10 years back, 12 years back, when I was doing the National Defense College course, there was a Portuguese lady from UN who had come and spoken to us about, and she was speaking about UN refugees and UN and this and that and all that, something human rights and all that. Then this talk came about superpower and this and that. So someone said, "Look, India is not a no nothing." She surprised all of us and said, "Look, in my estimate, India is already a superpower. You might not have the army and this and that, but in many respects, you are far ahead of the rest of the world." And she said it very genuinely. So we have some innate power in us. We have to realize that that power is what drives us. Okay, and I'm proud of India. I have no doubt about it. I mean, I have no doubt about all of us.
hmm.
Okay, so you look at vaccines. You're the best. You are giving it to the whole world. For many reasons, for the UN refugees and all. India is one of the few countries which has accepted maximum refugees.
Hmm.
We contribute for more global issues than any other country, UN related. So, in many issues, we are already a superpower. I mean, who's got a democracy of our size? If you saw the elections which were there in America and ours, we wouldn't have ever got into such a situation,
Hmm.
right? We have the power of democracy.
Hmm.
It doesn't matter whether it's one party or the other party. In a democracy like ours, we've thrown away bad parties like nappies. Does it happen? Changes of power have been smooth and clean, right? So we know how to find our way. And yeah, militarily we have to consolidate. We have a very strong military.
Hmm.
We just have to get our focus right in terms of modernization. If we can modernize, the rest is all QED. When it will happen, it's already happening. I'm quite confident that things will go the right way.
Right, sir. I mean, I think some of the insights that you've put across, which are going to go a long way in making us understand what the future holds for us. Uh, because everybody knows what's happening currently, and there are loads of people talking about it, but there's nobody who's actually saying what the future holds between India and China. Somewhere down the line, I personally believe that we as Indians have now accepted the fact that the Chinese are going to be our adversary. Previously, it wasn't the case. So we always had a little bad taste in our mouth when we said 62, but beyond that, we never really, it was always Pakistan, Pakistan, Pakistan. I guess this whole thing has brought about the realization within the country that Chinese are going to be our adversary. And some of your thoughts during this thing are going to go a long way for us to understand what, why, where, and how this whole thing actually first happened in the first talk that we had, and a couple of points that we took here, and what the future holds for us. Of course, you mentioned you can't predict beyond 2 years, um, but at least for the next 2 years, we have the time to strengthen ourselves, and that is a I won't call it a satisfactory sort of this thing, but that is a comfort a lot of us would have, that we have the time and we are making efforts towards strengthening ourselves. So, sir, thank you so much for joining me once again. And it's always a pleasure. I mean, I've spoken to you offline as well. It's always a pleasure talking to you. And I hope to get you back soon again, as soon as we have more developments on this particular issue for your deep insights.
Oh, thanks. It's been a great talk and a great discussion. I felt nice. Good evening and
Thank you, sir.
thanks a lot.
Good evening.
Thank you.